Hi waterfowlers, I'm Sean Mann, and this is 2006 World Snow Goose Calling Champion Chris Swift. Chris, congratulations on your win.
Thanks, Sean.
That was a great job. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from?
I'm from Cypress, Texas, just northwest of Houston.
Great. And how long have you been waterfowl hunting?
Oh, about 25 years now, I guess.
Excellent. So you started when you were?
Started when I was 10 years old.
Excellent. Now, who'd you go with first?
My uncle and my dad used to take me so we could help carry the decoys and do a little mouth calling.
So you started out as a mouth caller?
You bet.
So snow geese originally?
Yes.
Right from the start?
Right from the start.
Great. See, that's a new thing for the guys on the East Coast. Only in the last 10 years have we had, a good huntable snow goose population out there. You guys have had them for a long, long time.
Long time, yeah.
That's great. So you started out as a mouth caller.
Yep.
Do you do any mouth calling now?
A little bit now. In a foggy situation, a mouth call works really good sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people go to hammering on these calls in the fog or in a light wind situation, and it seems like it's too much on those geese sometimes.
Okay. Well, why don't you give me, I've got to ask you, why don't you give me a little mouth call?
Well, I'm old. I don't know if I can do it anymore, but
I know it's something you have to warm up to. That's fabulous. That's great.
I can still fool them a little bit.
Oh, that's great. That sounds really good. That's really good. So how did you get introduced to our calls?
Actually, a good friend of mine who's a state duck calling champion in Texas got a hold of one of your whiteouts, and he was trying to get me into the calling competitions, and I just happened to be home for the 2005 Snow Goose World Championship.
Great.
And he gave me this Sean Mann call. Not this one exactly. That one's on my mantle at home.
Awesome.
But he gave me one of these calls and said, "Hey, try this, Snow Goose call, and you need to get in this competition. It's pretty cheap to enter, and
a good time,
and jump in and see what it's about." So I practiced for a couple of days, I guess, and ended up taking third in 2005. So then I practiced a little more and kind of got hooked, and just figured out maybe what I needed to do different, what the judges wanted to hear, and pretty much called like a field hunting routine, and was fortunate enough to win it.
That's great. It's a lot. I'm sure you've had a lot of fun along the way.
I have.
First time you hop in, you're third in the world.
Yeah.
Second time you're in, you won it. That's great.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped.
So you're using our Express Whiteout, aren't you?
I love the Express Whiteout. It's one of the probably one of the few snow goose calls, if not the fewest snow goose call, that you can actually pull out of the package in the store and it's ready to hunt.
Well,
you don't have to tweak it, and it just sounds great, and you can do a lot with it.
Well, good. Well, let's, what I'd like to do is talk about how you use that call and see if we can show people how to take that call from, as you say, from the package to the field and begin to hunt with it. So let's start out with the real basics. How do you hold the call in your hand?
I like to hold it in between my thumb and my index finger, just so I can have, I like to make a cone right here, or like a
megaphone for long distance.
Like a megaphone for long distance. Where I grew up hunting, a lot of competition.
Volume.
Big spreads, volume. I got to get a goose's attention. So I like to go loud. If it's windy or something, I need to go loud.
Okay.
So that's how I start holding it, and then when I put it to my mouth, it's just like taking a sip from a bottle.
Okay.
My bottom lip's out, my top lip's in.
Okay, good. It's right in between there. It's up to your mouth like so.
Yep.
And how do you put the air in? Some guys, and I'll just preface it. Some people push from the diaphragm, like a strong exhale, and use some voice. I'll refer to that as grunting.
Okay.
Some guys do that, and some folks just blow air hard, strong.
Yeah.
What's your approach?
I like to blow from the gut. I get a nice loud blow, and I like for my call to be a little scratchy.
Okay, so before you actually make another note with the call, can you put the call up to your mouth backwards and just show us? Okay, so no voice on that.
All from down here.
So it's just a push of the air.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the way I do that, very similar. I'm pushing in the same way. It's kind of an exhale, and I'll start and stop the air with the tip of my tongue. So I just use the pressure gate is the tip of my tongue right behind my teeth.
Okay.
Some folks will use their throat to cut air off, or their diaphragm muscles. I just use my tongue. So it's same sound probably. I don't know if you can hear.
Yep.
The tongue come down from behind the top teeth.
Okay.
So it starts and stops there.
And you probably don't get as tired as I do blowing all morning then.
Well, I probably not. It's obvious that I'm not working out. So,
yeah.
That the call's not giving me a workout. So let's make your first sound then. Tell me what note you would, if you're teaching me. So tell me what first note you want me to make.
The first note I like to do, whenever in a hunting situation, I like to try to pick out a bird.
Okay.
You know, I'm watching the birds and I've got my cap pulled down or my face mask on, and I'm gonna watch the flock, and I'm gonna do a single loud, kind of a scratchy note.
Okay.
And I'm gonna see if I can get, whether it be a juvenile or the lead goose, I'm gonna see if I can get a bird to answer me.
Okay.
So I want it loud and at the
Let's
geese.
hear some of your favorite openers.
2 different pitches, just to give them something different to listen to, and I'm watching the geese to see if they'll do something with that.
So you're flipping cards to see which
Exactly.
card's going to be the payoff.
Exactly.
Okay, good. So you did 2 different ones. Can you turn the call around backwards and show me those?
Yeah, what I'm doing on my second note, just to drop it a little lower, is instead of the megaphone, I'm doing a loud note, and then I'm muffling it a little bit.
Okay. Okay, now try that the other way now. Okay, so
Yeah,
something like that.
Same principle.
Okay,
We're
yeah.
just you got an acrylic, I've got a polycarb.
Right.
And one morning
And a
they
little
might
bit different
like
tuning and that
a little
kind of
bit
thing.
different tuning, but they both sound great.
Great. So that's your opening line, kind of a high and a low,
Yeah.
kind of a series.
Yeah, just to give them 2 different notes, and hopefully one of them will like it.
Right, like maybe a
Same thing. One clear, one
something
scratchy.
like that.
Yep.
Okay, great. Now you got their attention.
If I have their attention, I'm still going to work that single, and I'm not a real fanatic caller. I'll get kind of loud so I can get their attention, but I'm not a guy that's going to go into 100 notes. If I've got a bird working, I'm hoping my field and my decoys are going to do most of their work for me. So if I've got one committed, I'm going to work on one bird, and that one bird, 50% of the time is going to bring more birds in with him.
Okay.
So if I'm trying to get the geese's attention, or if I'm competing, I'm going to go into a bunch of notes. Otherwise, I'm going to call him in, and as soon as that goose makes his note, I'm going to follow him every time.
Okay.
Because he's got his bird on the ground he wants to come to. So every time he hits that single note, I'm right behind him with the note.
Okay, so let's hear you progress from your opening high and low kind of notes. You got the attention of the bird, and now you're going to pull them in. What's a typical scenario sound like?
Okay, I'll throw a little murmur in there just to make it sound, I've got all the decoys on the ground, and I want it to sound like the geese are feeding on the ground too.
Okay.
So I'm going to get him with the high and low. Once I get his attention, every time he talks, I'm going to talk behind him, and then I'm just going to throw a little murmur in there
Okay.
and let him circle and do his thing.
Let's hear that.
Now I've got him coming. He talks and I answer.
Okay.
And then hopefully he'll come on in, and sometimes he'll bring his buddies.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. So Chris, you added the murmur to that. How do you do the murmur?
Well, the murmur, I'm going to use a couple fingers over the end of the call, and I'm going to growl from my throat.
So you put a little voice in.
Yeah, a little voice in it.
Okay.
In fact, I'll turn the call around and.
So it's
it's
almost
pretty
like you're making a little machine gun sound.
It's pretty loud, yeah.
With your
and
throat.
I just want a growl or a murmur into the call. When you
Okay.
see a bunch of happy snow geese with their heads
Yeah,
in
you'll
the mud
always
or
hear that
rice,
kind
you
of
always hear
motor,
that
that motor sound.
And I think that makes those geese feel comfortable.
Right, and I want to kind of address one little point here while we're talking about that. When I don't know that people understand that when we talk about the voice and that type of thing, what I see happening with the call is when you are grunting or humming or so on, you're actually kind of turning the call into a kazoo, where your voice is throwing that vibration into the reed, and it's easier, I think, than most people would think. I mean, it's a neat sound.
Yeah.
But did you say you put some?
Yeah, I just put a couple fingers over here.
Okay.
And then,
so show me that again with the call. You blew it backwards. Let me do it the other way.
Okay.
Okay.
And don't be worried about getting your throat, too loud into the call. Don't worry about that, because it's naturally it sounds great.
Right.
We do it in the fog,
Right.
A lot of times I'll have customers and we'll just be sitting there and kind of whispering and stuff, and the geese will come in because they hear something on the ground.
Exactly.
So don't be
They
afraid
hear a sign of life.
Don't be afraid to get that murmur, and don't be afraid it's too loud, just like grunting into a call.
Right. Now I hear you using your throat for that.
Yep.
And again, I'm going to contrast it. I use my voice as well.
Okay.
And I'm putting kind of a D sound with the tongue going do.
Okay.
So I'm throwing it that way. So, and then I'll cut it almost all the way off.
Yep.
and then back it out so that it gains volume.
Okay.
So just when I find kind of that point, I'll open the hands a little bit for volume. So. But I'm still do.
And that sounds good, and it's really close to what specs do on the ground and what Canada's do on the ground. I mean, there's not that much of a difference
the ground
when
talk
you've got
is
geese
ground
feeding.
talk.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so we have the high-low. We have kind of a murmur built in. So, Chris, what other notes are important to you?
Well, with this call, this is one of the first calls I could do a juvenile with.
Okay.
And with the juvenile, I'm really, really muffling the air on this.
Okay.
Almost closing my hands all together.
Well, let's see your hand position on
And I want a really scratchy, I'm almost closing my hand up, almost like I'm praying. Just have a little bit of air coming out the end, and it's a really scratchy note, but sometimes it does a trick.
Let's hear it.
On a first-year goose, they can barely get that call out. I'll start off on the adult, and then I'll go to a juvie.
Oh, that's great. Go ahead.
It really sounds like a young goose, and sometimes that really does a trick. Sometimes getting the young goose away from mama.
You bet.
Yeah.
Now let's see the hands again, and can you do that? Demonstrate that note.
Just
do the adult and then the juvie again.
Just throws it off a totally different pitch, but it sounds like a juvenile goose.
Yeah, and I guess from a call operation perspective, your adult note is wide open.
Wide open,
and
loud.
then, like you said, you're cutting the air off.
Yeah.
And naturally, that's going to make the call kind of bog down and give you that scratchy
Exactly.
sound. Okay. I do a little variation on that, and I always call it kind of a chop bark. Is what I refer to it as, but it's kind of a. And it's not really the juvie sound that you make. It doesn't have that same sharp cutoff character. But it's kind of a real simple note to make. I'm making an adult type sound. And then I slowly, to learn it, you slowly bring your hand down until the call gives you that raspy bog down sound. And then you just kind of learn to find the spot where and I've used that sort of thing with the in kind of the same way, working a single.
And that's the call you were saying sometimes that you use when a pair comes in or after you shoot at a flock to bring birds back?
First time I ever tried it, I was actually fooling around with a prototype of what has become this call. And I was fooling around with the reed while birds were coming in. When I picked it up, all I could get out of it was like a sound.
And that did the
birds
trick, huh?
locked up and came into that. We shot them. I think there were maybe 6 birds, 2 left. And I just kept doing that because it was really all I could get out of the call. But the first time I did it after we shot, the first time I noticed one of the birds kind of peel back toward us, kept doing it. They turned right around and came back in. And that was 10 years ago. It's been a staple of my snow goose calling ever since. So, I mean, I hear it a lot on those birds back east, on the greater snow geese that we have. And I think it's sort of a gathering call.
Okay.
I'll hear it in adults and juveniles. And it's just, find the back pressure to make the reed bog. And it's just a little bit of air, like t or k.
Okay.
And then I add this hand for a little body.
That sounds really good.
Just a different thing. I think that, along the way, and that's the neatest part about getting together with you is, you hear different approaches and
different variations
ways
of what you can do with the call.
And different ways to deal with the birds.
Yeah. People think a snow goose call is just the single note or let it all hang out, and there's actually more you can do with these calls.
Well, it's a great point, because when we watch snow geese and listen to snow geese, there are usually so many of them that we hear so much noise that we think all that noise is necessary to attract snow geese.
That's true.
And you're showing us that you're really zeroing in on a bird and working that bird.
Yeah, that's
and
my
having
first
that
goal.
Bird.
Is to start one bird, so maybe I can start more. But if you can't pick out that one bird, if I on a good morning in Texas, I've got fortunately I might have 3 or 4 hours of snow geese. I mean, sometimes nonstop, and we still have a lot of geese down there. And if I can pull one bird out of every 3 or 4 flights, and out of every 4 or 5 flights, that one bird I can pull 4 more behind him, then I've got happy hunters.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, so something different to try.
So it's interesting that, of course, different parts of the country and different styles. I'm using that kind of soft, murmury sort of thing, thinking it's a juvie or a gathering call. And yours is a more aggressive note, but at the same time, a single note. And that's, I think, a point that we should cover here is, your approach is to call a bird in the hopes of pulling more birds with them. Now, folks don't know it, but today's the first day you and I have met face to face.
Exactly.
We've talked once prior to today. And my approach from the other side of the country is pretty much the same. No matter how many times I've had a white tornado above me in the field, I'm still calling to a single bird or the small group that always seems to be under that white tornado of birds. I don't know, snow goose hunters ought to take notice to this, but they're really usually, I can't think of a time when I've had the big tornado above me that there wasn't a family group or a single bird or several singles working low that we could have taken a number of times, that if we are patient and just pull those birds to the ground, we'll get the knot shot.
Yeah, it's important to have that first bird working, even if he lands. I've had him land before back when I was a kid and didn't have a very well-behaved dog, and I can remember getting that big lab in a headlock. But you get that one bird committed and you get those birds crossing, don't worry about the whole flock like you said. You get the happy birds down below, even if you got to let them light. The rest of them are coming.
So is your approach on a flock the same as a single? You're going to work that single and bring that bird?
If I'm hunting on a Saturday or Sunday and I've got a lot of competition around me and the birds aren't working and I've got to do something different, then that's when I go into multiple notes. To my ear, a lot of times it doesn't sound as natural as I want it to sound, but I've got to get loud and I've got to get aggressive. And you only have so much air to do that. But in a situation like that, I'll throw in all 3 notes. I'll throw in a high, a low, a juvie, I'll murmur, and I'll just get on it, and the geese react to it, and usually in a good way.
Well, let's hear that.
Okay.
That's great.
That's an attention getter.
Right.
And,
exactly.
A lot of
You're
times
going
it works.
to be heard.
Yeah,
when
you're
going
to be heard, and a lot of times you throw all those notes out there, and like I said again, that one goose, maybe you're going to get his attention, or maybe you'll turn the whole flock.
You bet. And again, you're flipping the cards.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you're really working off 3 or 4 notes there. At the just 3 or 4 notes,
Yep.
A couple pitch variations, and really maybe 3 distinct ways of building those notes, which you've shown us. I think people have gotten caught up somewhat in the e-collar thing, the electronic deal, where you stick in the tape of 1 million birds, and I find, and I'm getting a lot of feedback from the field, that folks feel like they have a lot more control when they're concentrating, as you've said, on a bird or a couple of birds, and they are just making a few notes at a time. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's important. if you leave these in the truck for e-collar season, you're taking something out of hunting when you use the e-collar. I have used the e-collar. I guide back home for a living, and when e-collar season comes, the customers want to hear the e-collar. But the e-collar, no matter how digitally enhanced it is versus the old tapes in the old days, you still need to have these calls. I've turned the e-collar down. I've turned the e-collar off, and use the snow goose call to work that single. And the last 2 or 3 years back where we hunt, that seems like that's the ticket, is using that goose call and getting that one bird figured out and then working with the rest.
Well, that's great.
The e-collar, lately just hasn't been doing it.
Well, and I think that we're going to see that as time goes by. You're going to see the ups and downs. Some years, it's just like fishing lures, right?
Yep.
One year it's the red worm, and another year it's the green worm.
Exactly.
It's just kind of a different thing, and we don't really need to be able to explain that as much as people think. In other words, if that's what's working, you go with it. You know, if the e-collar is working, you go with it. If you get a little more control over the birds with a pneumatic call, you know, a hand up or, you know, blown call, then you go with that. You know, I really think people have to follow their success.
Yeah, they sure do.
Okay, Chris, let's pretend that you and I have been snow goose hunting and now we're fired up. We want to learn how to call. So we stopped into our local store and picked up a couple of whiteouts. And we're hunting buddies. So we're going to each go home with an assignment, okay? I'm going to learn how to do that low-pitched adult sound, and how about if you learn to do the high-pitched adult sound?
Okay.
That's our assignment for the week.
Okay.
We get back together on Saturday for our weekly hunt, and, you know, now we're going to try it out on the geese, right?
Okay.
So I'm just going right through the call.
And I'm going to blow mine. I'm going to blow mine with more open hands.
Okay.
To get that higher, louder sound.
Good. So I'm going to do the low adult, and you do the high adult.
Okay.
All right? You see, we're already calling snow geese.
Yeah, it sounded good.
I would tell you that on that first hunt back after our assignment, we'd probably get a bird.
We might.
You know? Okay, so let's take that and you know, we both split after our hunt again, and you know, the next thing you taught us was the murmur.
Okay.
Why don't we each go home and learn a murmur?
Okay.
Bring it back. I'll stick with my low.
Okay.
You stick with your high, and then we both have murmurs that we can mix in.
Okay.
Okay. So this is really to illustrate to folks that nobody's got to learn everything at one time, but if you can learn it building block by building block, you can take it to the field every time you hunt and learn a little bit more and be a little more successful with each passing hunt.
And the murmur is a great combination in the fog or in your thick clouds with no wind. The murmur just sounds natural.
That's for sure. Okay, so here we go. We're back. Here's my low adult. See, I think, you know, if you look at it this way, and if folks look at it this way, really this is the building blocks of really putting together a pattern that you can be successful with. And if you have a hunting partner to do it with, it just makes the hunts that much more fun.
It seems like the more the merrier goose calling sometimes, especially snow geese.
You bet. Now, you do your juvie now, so
Okay.
to keep the building blocks going. You're going to do that how again with your hands?
I'm praying. I'm gonna almost cut off all the air. I'm still gonna grunt, and I'm gonna blow a lot of air through the call, but I'm gonna muffle it to where it's really scratchy.
Okay. And if you want to do a low and a high adult, that's fine. I'm
Okay.
going to do a low and a high adult.
Okay.
I'm going to do a murmur. You can do some murmur. We're going to add, and then I'm going to add my little note with my cup.
Okay.
Okay. Kick it off a time. You know, the most fun thing about snow goose calls to me is that there really absolutely is no such thing as a bad note.
There really isn't.
Because you just keep blowing air and moving your hands around, and you find so many new tricks.
That's
you know?
true.
And I think that, you know, we've illustrated to folks really how the building of just a note a week, you know, can turn each person into a little flock of snow geese. And you know, it's my belief, and I've been guiding for some time, and you've been guiding for some time as well, and we share that belief that you're really calling to a couple of birds, a bird or a couple of birds, even when there are 1,000 in the air that may be coming to you.
On those lucky mornings, yeah.
Exactly. So it's an interesting approach. Anything else you want to cover with the snow geese?
That's it. Just, you know, practice, and like I said, you know, I blow this snow goose call because I can blow it out of the package, and I've rolled around in the mud. I've dropped it out of the boat. I've done everything but run them over, and you know, a call that you never have to retune and that stays together is the call I'm going to use.
Well, that's great. Yeah. Chris, I really appreciate you coming up here to share your secrets with us.
My pleasure, Sean.
And I'm delighted to meet you and wish you a lot of continued success.
Yeah, and I appreciate your tips. I learned a lot today myself.
Well, folks, you want to get in touch with Chris, you can get in touch through Frontline Waterfowl.
FrontlineWaterfowl.com.
And you know how to get in touch with us, www.seanmann.com, 800-345-4539. There's a blue coming right over you.